the chosen. Be brave, Professor. Be brave like my mother.
How do you feel?
Excellent. Really excellent.
Hey everyone, welcome to Hogwarts, a podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Hogwarts, a podcast. We are covering Chapter 17, A Sluggish Memory. Elizabeth is back on.
Hi everyone.
And it's been a while since you've been on. We had a run with Julie, but we have less teen drama in this one. I guess a little less. Still some.
Still some.
But Julie had her fill of all of the teen drama while you were away. So
Well, that's okay because I have quite a bit of teen drama in my day-to-day life at school, so I'm okay with it.
I feel that. So, in this chapter, this is a loaded chapter. I mean, there is so much to this. Mm-hmm. We get a return to Hogwarts from the Burrow via a one-way special, a one-off connection with the Flu Network to Hogwarts. We get some apparition lessons and the news surrounding that. And then we get another Albus lesson, which features a interesting talk before the lessons, a extended prologue that Dumbledore goes into, and then two different memories.
I'm so excited to be on a memory chapter.
Well, you got a big one. You got a big one.
I've been waiting for one.
So we start off with this return to Hogwarts. And like I said, it was via a one-off special connection via the Flu Network. And Molly's the only one there to say goodbye because all of the other members of the Order and just the Weasley household are all off to work. Mm-hmm. And Molly's there, and as she's saying goodbye to everybody, she just breaks down in tears because the ending to the Percy reunion did not go as she had hoped.
It was not quite the Hallmark moment.
No, it ended with what I'm only assuming as a violent assault of Parsnip. Which...
I love the fact that Ginny, Fred, and George all tried to claim credit for that.
All three tried to claim credit for assaulting Percy with Parsnip. And thus him leaving the Burrow.
I mean, let's be real. He wasn't there for the home reunion. It was just because Rufus told him to be there and used him as the excuse to come talk to Harry. So I don't disagree with Ron with calling Percy a prat. But at the same time, like, ooh, child, read your mother's mood. This is not the time for the insults. It just breaks her heart more.
We don't know what was said between Percy and the rest of the attendees at that Christmas feast.
It had to be so awkward.
It was definitely awkward. We don't know what was said because we were with Rufus and Harry, but clearly something went poorly. But I feel like this was an opportunity for healing.
Was this the first time Percy's seen Arthur since...
Probably not Arthur. I'm assuming they've seen each other at the Ministry.
Well, yeah, but like forced to have a conversation.
Possibly, yeah.
A lot of tension.
If there was even a conversation had. They could have just been sitting and standing there in complete awkward silence and then Parsnip.
Splat.
Yeah.
I'm going to vote for that as what happened.
Fair enough. Once they get back to Hogwarts, Hermione joins with Harry, Ron, and Ginny after she was visiting Hagrid. And she tells us that the new password, because Ron doesn't know the new password, the new password to Gryffindor Tower is abstinence. Which is an oddly muggle word, I feel like. Usually it's some made-up magical word that is the password.
We know the reason why that password has changed. The fat lady got drunk from wine in one of the monk cellar paintings over the Christmas break.
I'm assuming that wine just refills constantly.
I was going to ask this question. Like, how the heck do you think this all works? Because it seems like the painting world is this whole other universe where there's dimension and there's food and drink and there's socializing and it just kind of exists next to the real world. It's just fascinating to me.
It is a fascinating environment, and I will liken it to the multiverse of the Wizarding World, I suppose.
Because, like, you can have a second life in your portrait. if you wanted to.
Yeah, there is some limit to that, though. And there's also a limit as to whether these portraits are of real people or of...
Fake.
Just regularly painted people.
Yeah.
I'm assuming the fat lady is not an actual human being.
We don't know.
But we don't actually know.
But, like, it's so cool that they can do, like, fourth wall breaks to the real world, but at the same time, they can have their little shenanigans going on in the portraits. And I mean, like, when we saw, what was his face? The knight who was a horrible knight. Like, going in between paintings. It seems like there's land and locations going from one to the other.
So who chooses the new password for the new semester?
And how do they tell them that it's new?
Is it the fat lady herself going like, you know what, I need to practice more abstinence, so this is what's going to be the new password? Or is it McGonagall sending a message to the fat lady?
You need to be better with
You need to be better.
I kind of get the impression the fat lady picks it, but that does then raise the question of, like, how does word get out that this is the new password? And, you know, if you're gone over break, how are you supposed to get it?
It should be through... I feel like it should be through McGonagall to the head boy to the prefects.
And then cycle its way down.
Yeah, to the head boy, head girl, and then the prefects.
Mm-hmm.
But they literally entered Hogwarts through McGonagall's fireplace.
Yeah,
and she said nothing.
Yeah. So he's just like, don't get my office dirty.
Yeah. I don't know. Anyway, that's more that I already planned to talk about the fat lady. So let's move on.
Well, we haven't talked about her all that much in the past.
Fair.
So.
But Hermione also brings news that there is another meeting with Aldous that will be set for tomorrow night, the next evening. And as soon as they enter the Gryffindor common room, we get our break sound.
1-1.
Thank you for doing that, so I didn't have to.
I kind of want to hear you do it, though.
No.
Aww.
We get what is only described as a vertical wrestling match.
I mean, she basically, like, flung herself onto him.
Yep.
Like, no thank you.
And I'm just going to take care of all the Wan stuff right now. Later in this chapter, she's described as tickling Ron.
Yeah. No, don't do that. don't do that. That's ugh.
Then, even later, she comes up behind him to cover Ron's eyes and say, Wan, guess who?
Mm-hmm. And what you're also having happen at the same time is, like, other people are watching this and reacting to it in ways that are not very flattering to Lavender or to Ron. I mean, like, when she was screaming the Wan and, like, jumped on him, other people were snickering. Hermione even had, like, this little snarky laugh of, like, I'm glad I'm not dealing with that. And then, like, Ron starts to get embarrassed with her doing these things. So he's starting to, like, tell her off of, like, I don't like this.
Well, we don't know what he says exactly, because everybody leaves the situation and then he quickly follows.
But he comes up embarrassed and is almost like,
yes,
makes it well known through his body language, like, don't you dare ask me about that.
Yeah.
So it makes me think that maybe over break he had a little more thinking about, what do I actually want from this relationship? Because so far it's just been, let's make out like crazy. And now that she's seeming to be clingy, it's like, I don't like this. Don't touch me.
You wouldn't like a gigantic gold necklace saying my sweetheart?
God, no.
No? Fair enough. So, yeah, the whole Lavender Ron thing is still uncomfortable for everyone. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, it's just gross.
Yeah. Speaking of relationships, Ginny says that she is off to meet Dean, but Harry notes an unenthusiastic tone in her voice.
We know that Harry's starting to have some feelings for Ginny, and obviously they spent the, like, mini break together. But Dean didn't do anything prior to break that could have set her off, as far as we are aware, right? They played Quidditch, and it was successful.
Quidditch. I don't know what he's saying behind the scenes, because they played well. Mm. He can be starting to maybe Cormac McLagan it, where he's talking about his...
I could replace Katie Bell kind of thing.
He's talking about his own Quidditch prowess, maybe a little bit too much to someone who's very good in her own right.
I could see it a little.
I'm just assuming.
No, I could definitely see that as being like, oh, I'm so great, and be like, excuse me, I'm also on the team, and I also do well, and hearing you just toot your own horn day in, day out, it gets annoying.
Ginny's not one to hold back, though. If Dean's doing that, she's going to come back at him with, I actually made the team. You were cut initially. After Ron and Lavender have been set aside and Ginny goes to see Dean, Harry and Hermione finally sit down to actually talk, which I feel like is a little overdue. And he tries to smooth things over with her and Ron, and Hermione swiftly, immediately, and forcefully shuts that down. And Harry notes that she's coming in a little hot. I think I'm going to take a timeout.
I honestly, I feel good about Hermione doing this. She's setting her boundaries. And I'm sure over the break she thought about that of like, what am I willing to discuss? What am I willing to do or not do to keep the peace? And I'm not gonna comment on it because otherwise I might let out a whole lot of anger like we did with the birds.
This goes back to, I think, some thoughts that Harry was having pre-Christmas break of just like, this is going on a while. Like, girls in revenge is like a whole thing.
I love that moment so much from the previous chapter. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry that I missed that because the one quote he has always it just makes me so happy where he's like, he's like left to ponder the fathoms, the depth to which girls would get their revenge. And I'm like, yes, it's so accurate and true.
Why
and
are
I
you
love
laughing
it
and smiling?
because it makes me happy because it's so true. It's so true.
You're so happy about this truth.
Because Harry realizing it and being like, that's crazy. Whereas girls are well aware of like the fact we will do all sorts of stuff to get our revenge. It just makes me happy.
The fact that that's true, I still don't think is a great thing, but that's beside the point.
In any case.
So anyway, Harry notes the tone in Hermione's voice and was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to drop it for right now, and we'll get to that another time.
Smart man.
Yes. So they end up discussing the whole Snape Draco of it all. And Hermione very quickly agrees with Arthur and Lupin that Snape is clearly deceiving Draco to get whatever information he can out of him. Mm-hmm. And she does concede, however, that the idea that Draco is threatening people with Fenrir Greyback is concerning.
Yeah, but she also does say maybe it's just an empty threat. Which Harry's like, you're gonna eat your words. I told you so. You can't deny that this is all very, like, sketchy and sly and sneaky and
he still handles it very well. And maybe it's because he's been, like, told this the entirety of Christmas break. This exact response. And
I mean, he predicted that Hermione would react this way, so.
Right, but he's still coming with it as exasperated, not antagonistic.
Which is a sign of maturity.
It is, and it also sets up their next conversation well, and their amicable, continued friendship. You know, it's nice. Harry then goes to fill Hermione in on all of the talk with Rufus, and again, you weren't on for that conversation either. And we can get into your full rebuttal. We'll give you a whole minute, couple of minutes, in the spoiler section to kind of talk about some of the things you missed, because you missed some.
All the questions that you had for Julie.
Yes, I have. Thoughts on Rufus and Harry's discussion, but he fills Hermione in on all of that, and Hermione ends up agreeing with Ron and ultimately Julie as well that it's bold of the Ministry of Magic to ask for Harry's help when they've really put him through it the last year and a half. So Hermione's kind of on that same wavelength. We get into apparition lessons. Apparition lessons are posted on the board in the Gryffindor Common Room. It's 12 galleons for a 12-week course in apparition.
I'm a little surprised that it's only 12 weeks. Like, it's a very dangerous thing if you don't know what you're doing and you need to practice and whatever. 12 weeks, I mean, that's
3 months.
3 months to disappear and reappear in places without hurting yourself or anybody else. That seems like not that much time.
That's true. I guess when you put it that way, that does make sense. When I first read it, I was like, 12 weeks seems like a bit long. Like, I thought this would be like a short series of lessons. This isn't a short series. This is almost a full semester. But Ron notes that Fred and George, this is one of the few exams that they actually passed on the first time. They did pass their apparition lessons the first time through. He says Charlie failed his first time, which I feel bad for Charlie that he's being brought up for the first time in, since Goblet of Fire.
For a while, yeah.
And the first time he gets brought up again is, you failed. But Ron does note he failed for a reason. Charlie's a little bit bigger. He has literally more mass to transport through space and time than the rest of them. And what I like about this is he does note that Fred and George don't say anything about it to Charlie.
Yep.
At least to his face.
Yep.
Which, he kind of mimics this, like, gorilla-esque posture that Charlie must have, being, like, a little bit on the brawnier side of the Weasley family. And I just like the idea that even Fred and George know their limits. Like, we don't pick on Charlie. Charlie will beat us both up. It just gives an interesting insight to Charlie that we don't often get, and to the twins, because you don't often get that side of them either, where it's like, they're very quick with a joke. However, sometimes they have to be careful about who they're making fun of.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of interesting. It turns out everyone is excited about this new skill that they're about to learn, and Ron lets slip that Harry has done sight-along apparition before, almost lets slip that it was with Albus. And for the rest of the entirety of the day, Harry is being pestered with questions about what apparition feels like and what the whole experience is like.
I love the fact that, like, while Harry's talking about this, Seamus gets so excited that he shoots a jet of water at Flitwick on accident, but it knocks him over. And then he gets the lines, "I'm a wizard, not a baboon brandishing a stick," which just makes me so happy every single time that I read it. But the second thing I'm, like, surprised by, you would think more of these kids coming from wizarding families would have experience with sight-along apparition.
You'd think, I suppose. I just don't know how many parents are comfortable with it, because I feel like it's, and I don't know if this is a fact or not, but do they have to get a separate, like
certificate or something?
Kind of, for sight-along? Because now you're not just doing it to yourself, you're doing it to other people, which has to be more difficult.
I don't know, because, like, I was trying to think in terms of if you had a child and you're trying to transport them, like doing flu powder, it's one at a time. So do you send your child first and then risk them getting kidnapped, or do you, like, go first and then risk them not coming to the right place? Or then brooms, right? Like, you have to get a larger broom that can fit the two people, and is that a comfortable experience? It reminds me of, like, long car rides with whiny children, not fun. And then, like, other types of transportation seems more rare for a family. So I would think the quickest, easiest, safest way would be, okay, I'm holding you, we're gonna go. Other than, like, a port key, but you can't get a port key unless you get ministry approval.
All of it. I mean, flu powder is ministry regulated. Port keys are ministry regulated.
It just seems like if you wanted it to work well and you have your kid and they're safe with you, having them literally clutched to you and, okay, away we go. But at the same time, you're right. Like, if you mess that up and you mess up your kid, oh, that's a little...
I just get the feeling wizarding parents would opt for maybe a more standardized way of travel. I don't know how to... Standardized is not the way to say it.
Slower but safer.
Maybe. So we get to the Albus lesson. And there's a whole lot going on with this Albus lesson. They start off with Albus and Harry discussing Harry's interaction with Rufus. during Christmas. And Albus informs Harry that originally it was Fudge's idea to recruit Harry. And it was essentially a last-ditch effort for Fudge to maintain his position as Minister of Magic. If he can get Harry on his side, he might be able to actually maintain his position.
And Rufus isn't happy with either of them, but I love Dumbledore's quote, "We must try not to sink beneath our anguish, Harry, but battle on."
I mean, I have all kinds of issues with this all over the place. Obviously, Rufus continued this pursuit of Harry. And this is where Albus and Rufus ended up parting ways of sorts on philosophy, which I can only imagine that conversation. You'd think Albus would be delighted. He's like, oh, I have somebody that's actually willing to fight. Somebody that's willing to fight with me. And then Rufus brings up the idea of using Harry to help the Ministry and help kind of unite the wizarding world, kind of make a good, firm stance that people can look to and be like, okay, hey, we're all on the same page. Voldy's out there. Let's attack it. Let's be aware of it. And I was like, well, you can't use Harry.
Well, yeah.
Which is fair. I mean,
you're using a child to promote...
Sure, I get it.
A lie.
I get it. But you now have an opportunity to form an alliance with the Ministry of Magic. And if you're Albus, you're letting the idea that Harry is, the sole thing tying this all together. And the fact that you said no, and now you're just like, nope, Ministry's out.
Well, to be fair, it could be Rufus doing that. It could be Rufus being like, if you don't let me talk to Harry, then we're done here.
It comes across as two old bulls that can't be in the same room together. Like, if it's not their way, it's no way.
Right.
Is how it's coming across. Mm-hmm. Each one wants to be in charge, which, fair enough. Honestly, each one has a right to think that. One is literally the head of state and in charge of everything. Mm-hmm. And the other one is arguably the greatest wizard on the planet.
But I mean, to be fair, you would think Rufus would recognize how... I mean, repeat history when you don't study it. Okay, well, study Fudge's reign. He didn't listen to Dumbledore. He tried to make these decisions that Dumbledore was like, that's not gonna work. And then it didn't work. Spoiler alert. So I feel like Rufus could come in, and if Fudge was like, yeah, you want Dumbledore is right, listen to Dumbledore, work with Dumbledore, that would benefit us. If Rufus comes in and he's like, okay, I want to talk to Harry Potter and get him on our side, get us like a little ministry mascot, and Dumbledore's like, yeah, that's not going to work. Okay, then I'm going to shelve that idea until maybe we have a little bit of a better working relationship and things seem to be going well. Then maybe I'll bring it back up again. But I'm not going to just like completely throw away the chance to work. So I think it could be both sides going on. Dan's raising his hand, you guys.
To be fair, put yourself in the position of Fudge and Rufus. You are the head of state, responsible for the health and well-being of your entire constituency.
Yeah.
And that wasn't Fudge's advice that we know of to Rufus about like, hey, try to reach out to Dumbledore. His advice was, good luck trying to get a hold of Dumbledore.
Oh, yeah.
If you're the head of state and you know the greatest wizard of all time is over here, and you can't even get him to talk to you or have a meeting with you, you'd be a little upset. Like, look at it from their point of view, though.
I think I'd be... I don't know. I'd be upset that he's not talking to me, but I'd also recognize, like, Dumbledore... If there's any hope of us getting through this, it's trusting that Dumbledore is going to pull through like he always does. And
That's a lot of faith in an individual.
It is a lot of faith in an individual, but I also think that, to his credit, like, okay, here's Fudge brings this idea to Dumbledore because he didn't have anything to go off on, so he just goes off of what Fudge tells him. And then Dumbledore is like, no, we don't know to what degree he gave the full reasoning of why it should be a no, but it was a no. Well, now is your chance to ask Dumbledore, okay, so what would you recommend I do? And if Dumbledore gave a recommendation, then do it. If he doesn't, then be like, okay, well, what do you want from me?
Work with me? Can you work with me a little bit?
In which case, then maybe it would actually work.
What if Albus is not willing to work with the Ministry?
Then that's where the fallout comes, and I think that's what happened, which he noted even the Daily Prophet recognized and reported on accurately. But I think it's the way they phrase things, even just the syntax of I want to use Harry, saying I'm going to use him instead of work with him. A big difference there.
We'll continue the Albus-Rufus interactions in the spoiler. We'll move on past this. Harry ends the conversation with saying that Rufus told him that he's Dumbledore's man through and through, which Albus is like, of course he did.
I was like, how very rude of him.
Yep. And Harry goes, I told him that I definitely was.
Yeah.
And Albus gets a little watery. His eyes get a little watery.
He like opens his mouth and then closes it, and then Fox like does his little musical note, which I just always take as like him trying to give Dumbledore a little courage and comfort in the moment. Because I think he was 100% gonna cry. Like, you, my student, said you're my man through and through. And it's so reminiscent of Chamber of Secrets when, you know, Dumbledore was like, you know, anyone who's loyal to me, I'm always going to be there for. And he got his help in the Chamber of Secrets. And after everything that they went through last year with him yelling at him and like destroying his office and stuff, to still hear like, yeah, I'm your guy, is like, oh, that's so sweet. Approve.
He has this moment, and obviously the pause is to recollect himself so that when he does speak again, it's steady and not, you know.
Like, I'm bawling my eyes out, I can't believe you like me. Like that.
I don't think Dumbledore would ever or has ever sounded like that. But he
wipes away a tear very gently, like that. Thank you, Harry.
Changes subjects to the point of, he notes that, yeah, you know, Rufus is trying to track me, but he keeps sending Dawlish.
I feel so bad for Dawlish.
And I jinxed him the one time, and I felt bad enough the one time. So it was with, quote, greatest regret that I had to jinx him again. And I'm like, okay, two things. One, Dumbledore clearly doesn't regret jinxing Dawlish. Two, I feel like Dawlish gets so much flack because he comes off as very incompetent.
I wouldn't call him incompetent.
No, it comes off that way. When you're reading this, when you're reading the series of Harry Potter, he comes off as incompetent. What has he done? He's tried to subdue or track Albus twice, the greatest wizard of all time. That's a high bar to try to claim. And then presumably, we don't know for this for sure, presumably he was one of the Aurors that Umbridge took to subdue Hagrid, who's a half-giant, not an easy task. None of them did well.
See, I would disagree. I don't think that he comes across as incompetent. I think it's more like he's unfortunate because every assignment seems to be one where it's like, you know, I'm not going to succeed at that.
I think it should be a credit to his ability that they keep sending him out against seemingly the toughest competition. But
yeah.
Anyway. So Harry ends up telling Albus, he's like, hey, I got one more thing before we start. I got one more thing. And Harry tells Albus about Snape and Draco. And Albus is basically like, forget about it. We good. Don't worry about it. Put it out of your mind. It's not important. And Harry is so taken aback by this response that he's like, I'm sorry, sir. Did you actually understand what I told you? Which, that's a take.
Yeah.
Albus's response is pure gold because he goes, "Blessed as I am with extraordinary brain power, I understood." And then he goes on to basically say, possibly, just possibly, maybe you can think about this for a second, but possibly I understood more than you even understand.
I'm going to use these lines next time someone mansplains to me.
Hopefully not to me on this podcast.
No, it's a
Come
perfect...
back in the spoilers to when we have this.
No, it's a perfect, like, it's just snarky enough, it's intelligent enough, it's dismissing enough, but it's also being like, yes, I do hear you, and yes, I understand, and yes, we're moving on, because I know something you don't, and trust me, it's not of great importance.
Harry doesn't drop it.
No, he doesn't.
He continues and asks if he really trusts Severus. And Albus, and I'm putting in not calmly here. This is about as mostly aggressive as Dumbledore will get unless he's in an actual fight.
I take it as like a parent's warning tone of like...
He changes tone.
You're towing the line
He
here.
changes tone definably.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is a definite change in his demeanor. Mm-hmm. And he goes, I have been tolerant enough of this question. My answer has not changed. Mm-hmm. Boom.
Definitely closes the door on the conversation.
And I like how... And honestly, if I was one of the other headmasters in these portraits, I'd
You'd
be
be
like,
oh!
No. I would be like, who is this child? Like, I'd be like, I would send him out right now.
I'm
Like,
sure
who
that's
is
what
this
Phineas
kid?
was thinking.
I'm sure it was. I'm sure more than him. He might have been the most vocal about it. I'm sure there was at least one other portrait that was like, I'm sorry, who is this kid?
I'd be one of those portraits, be like, oh, dang, he just shut him down.
I would be like, this kid is even lucky to be in this room right now. Like, watch himself. Anyway, all right, we'll get to the first memory here, but well, kind of
Pre-memories, really.
We'll get to the first memory, kind of.
It's like recap from a previous episode conversation.
Yeah, he catches Harry up on a lot of different things because he starts off this like prologue to the memory where he says, you know, hey, Tom Riddle's arrived at Hogwarts. He's immediately sorted into Slytherin. And interestingly, Tom showed no signs of arrogance or aggression in his time at Hogwarts. He seemed polite, quiet, and really thirsty for knowledge, which really impresses most of the staff.
Yeah.
They're taken with him. They're like, wow, this kid is great.
Well, that, and he said, like, you know, he must have at one point or another realized, like, oh, Slytherin, snakes, Parseltongue, I can speak Parseltongue, and if there were rumors of him impressing students or frightening students or trying to get power from his skills, like, nothing that happened in the Slytherin common room ever reached the staff. So my mind is thinking, like...
That we know of.
That we know of.
We'll get to that later.
I mean, my impression, my guess would be that he knew it was a skill and kept it in his back pocket of like, I'm going to use this when it's going to be the most impressive and most scary.
Essentially, Albus chooses to let Tom have the chance to be better. Mm-hmm. He doesn't go out of his way to put Tom Riddle in a disadvantaged position because of what he witnessed at the orphanage. Mm-hmm. He says, you know, I'm not going to alert other staff members to potential issues when, you know what, I'm going to let him have his own course.
Which I both agree and disagree with. From a teaching standpoint, it reminds me of when, you know, teachers have kids that they didn't enjoy. Maybe they had an attitude, or maybe they never did their homework, or whatever the case may be. They always are like, oh, look out for that one. Good luck with that one. And sometimes those kids are really enjoyable, and it's just, for whatever reason, they didn't click with the previous teacher. So when you hear like, oh, this kid's going to be hell on earth, you automatically put a bias towards them that might not be fair.
So
on the other hand, though, like, you should probably be aware that this kid is sneaky with their cell phone or does like to curse under his breath or shows like psychotic behavior, especially when with his peers, might be a good thing to look out for. So I kind of see where Dumbledore is coming from, but at the same time, I feel like he should have alerted them a little bit more of like, just keep an eye just in case.
You took both sides of that.
I know.
So essentially, Harry listens to this explanation of why Dumbledore didn't warn anybody about Tom Riddle, and he makes this comparison to, oh, here we go again, Albus's trust in people that have potentially questionable alternative motives. Mm-hmm. I'm assuming he's talking Snape, since we just got over this.
Oh, 100%.
Draco Snape thing.
Yeah.
And Albus says, well, I did keep a close eye, and Riddle, to his, I guess, credit, knew it. He knew Albus was watching him. He thought he revealed a little bit too much in their original meeting, and he promised to himself, at least this is the read that Dumbledore gets, that he's never going to reveal that much to Dumbledore ever again.
I like that Harry recognized that instead of Dumbledore saying it, because he started to be like you said, of the whole, oh, you're so trusting and see how this backfired, how did you? But then he was like, well, wait a second. The Riddle from the diary told me you never really trusted him. So you didn't trust him, did you? And yeah, I kept a close eye and I wouldn't let him charm me. That's my way of keeping an eye on things.
Riddle never even really tried to charm Albus. He was like...
He knew it wouldn't work.
Yeah, he felt like... And this all goes back to that original meeting at the orphanage, where it's like Dumbledore was the first one to call him out on something and know exactly what he did. So I don't think he ever tried to really pull one over on Albus, because he always felt like he'd always call him out on it. Mm-hmm. So there's an interesting dynamic there. Dumbledore notes that Voldy started to gather friends, quote unquote.
For lack of a better word.
For lack of a better word. They tended to be weak, seeking protection, ambitious, seeking glory, or thuggish, gravitating towards a leader-like figure. Mm-hmm. And some of them, I took note that he did say some of them were the first Death Eaters. What happened to the rest of them? Like, you'd think all of them would just follow that path.
Well, I'm sure at some point some of them recognized, like, oh, even this is too dark for me.
This is a path I don't want to follow.
Yeah.
But that group of associates, let's call them, were never detected in open wrongdoing. Mm-hmm. There were a lot of nasty incidences that happened while this group of students happened to be at Hogwarts, but no one can ever actually pin them on it.
Including the death of a girl in the Chamber of Secrets, which, sidebar, we know who the girl is. Mm-hmm. Why doesn't he ever say Myrtle's name? He's just like, oh, there was a girl who died.
Respect for her privacy, I guess.
She's literally crying in the bathroom as we speak.
Well, yeah, but you don't want to, be like, that girl, Myrtle, the one who died, and he's not there to, advertise how this person died.
If anything, I feel like Myrtle would enjoy it more, because then people are going to come to her and ask her about her death, which seems to be the only time she gets excited.
Albus is not in the business of flaunting and advertising this kind of stuff.
I know, but to the same degree, I'm like, I feel like by not saying her name, you kind of take away her existence.
Okay. There's a difference in being like, yes, Myrtle was a student here once. She was in Ravenclaw. She was blah, 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 blah. Mm. And she was murdered by a giant... there's two ways to talk about someone's existence.
Yeah, I guess. But I don't know. It seems a little dismissive to me to just not call her by her name. But in any case, these Death Eaters or future Death Eaters... like you said, they're not really friends, more like followers.
I will give you this, since you mentioned Myrtle. And Myrtle obviously attended Hogwarts at the same time as Tom Riddle. Mm-hmm. Albus goes on to mention, few who actually knew Tom Riddle during his years at Hogwarts were willing to come forward and talk about Tom Riddle.
Right.
Well, you have Myrtle right there. I wonder if he's ever actually... I feel like we've broached this at some point on this podcast, but I feel like you should probably go talk to Myrtle.
Oh, 100%.
And even though you can't maybe pull a memory from a ghost or use legitimacy on a ghost, I'm sure, like you just said, she'd be willing to talk about her experience.
I wonder if you could, though, get ghost memories. Wouldn't that be
can't
fascinating?
imagine you would.
That'd be so cool, though. I kind of want them to do that. That's a, like, Department of Mysteries type thing. Of could you get memories from a ghost?
To your point, I think Albus might be overlooking Myrtle, maybe a touch. I don't know. Maybe he has talked to her, because he seems to have talked to quite a few people who worked at Hogwarts during this time, and most of them are, what he says, is too terrified to even say a word.
Which is understandable, given what the man became.
Yeah. Riddle was obsessed with his parentage at Hogwarts, which is obviously normal for a kid with his upbringing, being an orphan and such.
What I think was interesting, though, is he said that he assumed Tom Riddle Sr. was the one with the magical ability, and he combed everything looking for that, and when he couldn't find anything, then it was like, well, the only other thing I have to go off on is Marvolo.
Yeah, once he was convinced that his father was not magical, he then dropped his name, and presumably that's when he took on the moniker of Lord Voldemort. And that starts an interesting story. This is the end of his prologue. Summer of his 16th year of existence, which is a very dramatic way of saying he was 16 years old.
Sweet 16.
He set off to look for the Gaunts.
Right.
And we then kick into the memory of one Morfin Gaunt. And Dumbledore says, hey, I was really lucky to get this.
Yeah.
This was a hard one to get. I'm thrilled that I was able to come down with this. But we arrive at the Gaunt house, and it had become what Harry describes as the filthiest place Harry had ever seen before. And Morfin is sitting slumped in a chair, and he's so dirty, and his hair's so overgrown that you can't see his mouth or his eyes. Not exactly a great place. And again, I go back to, and I get Morfin is not exactly firing on all cylinders, let's say.
Oh, he just came from Azkaban.
Yeah.
It took a bit out of you.
Sure, but you should be able to clean the place with a flick of your wand if you really wanted to, right?
Well, I feel like this is similar to his sister with her magic. Like, now that his father is dead, maybe there's some trauma there. His sister has run off. Slytherin's locket is gone. Anything of value has been stolen. He wasted his life in Azkaban, and now it's just like, what's the point of life? Like, what's worth living for? So, cleaning, why bother? But you could also argue maybe it was him thinking it's a woman's job, and he doesn't want to do it.
Just not his job.
Not his job.
Not his problem,
Nope.
even though he's living in it. But
Yep.
Riddle enters the room, and Harry notices that despite facing a wild person in nature who's brandishing a wand and a knife, he couldn't help but admire the fact that Riddle entered this room fearlessly.
Yeah, like he owns the place.
Like he completely is in control.
And he looks both like disgusted and disappointed that this is what the Gaunt house looks like.
I mean, yeah. But he calms Morfin by speaking Parseltongue. And Morfin goes into this little rant about, well, you look like this muggle, and he goes on this whole rant about Tom Riddle Sr. and his sister, Merope. And he goes so far as to call Merope, literally, this is the word, a slut. He calls her a slut. And says that she was dishonoring both Morfin and Marvolo by even being with the smuggle. And then he goes to turn around to go to his chair again, and boom, memory over.
Well, one tiny thing that you skipped over with that, like, Tom Riddle, when he heard the name Riddle, like his eyes kind of like lit up and almost seemed taken aback of like, oh, here's the riddle that I've been searching for. You're telling me it's a muggle who lives at that house over that away, and he's older, looks just like you, and he came back after leaving your mother, basically. And yeah, he's just right over there.
Yep.
You know?
So, post-Morfin memory, we get an Albus breakdown, essentially, adding some context.
Yeah, like, why did Al go black?
Morfin ended up waking up alone and without his ring. He was wearing the Marvolo ring that Harry has noted from time to time in these sessions with Dumbledore. But he woke up without it. Tom Riddle Sr. and both of his parents were found dead in their home in Little Hangleton. The Ministry of Magic presumed an already convicted Muggle hater who has already attacked the victim once committed to this crime. And honestly, you can hate on the Ministry of Magic all you want, and that's probably fair. I mean, come on. This is, like, locked up.
Well, that
right?
And, like, I think they did a good investigation. They checked his wand to see if, like, what was the spell that it last did, and sure enough, it was the Vada Kedavra, and, like, it makes sense for him to have done it. He confessed to it.
He confessed gleefully to this. He was boasting
He said
about
he'd
it.
been, like, waiting for the opportunity, so it makes sense.
And combined with the previous report from Bob Ogden about how Morfin is particularly anti-Muggle, I mean, this is wrapped up, right? I mean, you have zero doubt in your mind that this happened the way that's presented.
Right.
So you really can't blame the Ministry of Magic here, I don't think. But yeah, Morfin admitted to the crime. His wand was used in the crime itself. And Morfin goes to Azkaban, where he will ultimately spend the rest of his days. And through the rest of those days, he says he'll kill me for losing it. He'll kill me for losing the ring. That's all he ever said from there on out. So Riddle, just to summarize here, ends up killing 3 people, implanting a false memory, and steals property.
At 16.
At 16.
Yep.
Created like 3, 4, 5 crimes?
You kill your father and your grandparents, and you set up your uncle to die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a lot for a 16-year-old.
Yeah. Yeah, just a bit.
Wow. Okay.
I will say, this is one of those times where I really distinctly remember reading this for the first time, because once they mentioned, like, the Riddle House and the murders that happened there, obviously this ties back to the first chapter of Goblet of Fire, where they're like, oh yeah, legend has it that once upon a time they just dropped dead for no reason, and why was that? And it's like, when it comes full circle like that, it just makes me so happy. It just fills me
Murder
with
makes
warmth.
you happy.
No! The way it just, like, it all ties together, because I'm so bad at, like, withholding that extra information that would then be like, oh, so the fact that she sprinkled this so far ago in book 4, and now here's Dumbledore, who had knowledge of it the whole time and is now giving that knowledge to Harry, who dreamed about that house. Like, the way it just all comes together, it makes me really happy.
Albus says he gathered this information on a visit to Morfin in the last weeks of his life, and it took particularly skilled legilimency to pull this out of Morfin. And Harry begins putting together some loopholes in the Ministry of Magic and how they control things.
Yeah.
Because he's like, I'm sorry, hold on. Real question. You had no idea that this 16-year-old was doing this magic? Well, what are we doing here? And Albus is like, well, he was in the presence of an adult wizard.
Yeah, it says Ministry detects underage magic, but not the perpetrator.
Yeah, you can't identify an individual if there's magic all around them. So, like, for example, we've talked about all of these people. We just talked about Harry and Ron peeling vegetables at the burrow by hand, and Fred and George teasing them about it. They could, if they wanted to, do it by magic. It's just what Albus says is the ministry relies on wizarding parents to enforce wizarding law. They can't enforce it themselves.
You know the Malfoys don't do that.
They probably encourage Draco to
just do magic.
to try stuff, yeah. Well, I mean, he was doing occlumency and legilimency, clearly. If, he's trying to employ it upon Snape.
It does make me wonder to a degree. Like, we've heard before them talking about people who are pure blood or they're, muggle-born or whatever. You would think that magic would have almost like an individual aura to it or color or something that would individualize it. Just because we know the wand chooses a wizard and not every wand will work for every wizard, you would think there'd be some level of individuality connected with their magic that the ministry would be able to keep track of and then do a better job of policing.
We'll tackle the second memory, which is from Horace Slughorn. A sluggish memory. Who would have guessed?
Yeah, not the memory Ron had of puking up slugs.
No.
Way back in the day.
Although that would be hilarious if Dumbledore decided to pull that out.
Also, triple meaning on the word. It's literally a sluggish memory because he said the memory looks congealed and he was like, did the memory go bad? Because he almost has to scrape it out into the pensieve.
Yeah. We enter this memory of Slughorn's office, and it's him essentially hosting what appears to be a slug club meeting with Voldemort and I think it says roughly 6 other teenage boys.
Mostly Slytherins, it seems like.
It seems like mostly Slytherins. The ones we get named are Avery Lestrange, which would be Rodolphus Lestrange, and Voldy himself. So at least 2 Death Eaters are at this meeting. And
I like the fact that Voldy brought crystallized pineapple to try to butter up Slughorn.
Riddle is Mr. Popular. Slughorn keeps fawning over him, not only about his just general knowledge and how he possibly knows what he knows, but just the charm that's involved with it. You not only know what you got to do, but you can do it so well. Is a talent that Slughorn particularly favors.
Yeah.
But right then, the memory goes cloudy, and Harry can't see anything but Dumbledore's serene face staring back at him. And you hear the words, "You'll go wrong, boy, mark my words," in Slughorn's voice.
And then it comes back to normal, no one notices
up.
anything.
And then we get Voldy asking, after Slughorn's like, "Wow, it's getting late, you guys should go home. Avery Lestrange, you still owe me some work."
And Harry noticed Voldemort's wearing the ring, which means his memory is after he has killed his father.
Correct. And Voldy begins to ask about this thing called Horcruxes. Room goes cloudy again. And Slughorn basically goes into this little rant about, I don't know anything about Horcruxes. Don't ever ask me about them ever again. Yeah. All that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And that's the memory. And then they get pulled out.
And Harry looks super confused.
And he's like, well, Albus, you told me that this is the most important memory we have. Half of it's not even there. What are we talking about?
I said it's a false memory. It's been tampered with.
Yeah, Slughorn is clearly ashamed of what he remembers, and he's tried to put himself in a more favorable light, which begs a whole bunch of questions.
You can video edit your memory.
Kinda. Would you ever want to do that? Molly and I had this conversation way back when, but would you even want to do that? I'm sure the temptation has got to be there, because
temptation for sure.
If anyone has any kind of anxiety, which everybody does, I know some people stay up at night, and they stay up at night because they're sitting there, they're getting ready for bed, they're chilling.
What they did in 4th grade.
The weird thing you said to someone you don't even talk to anymore in 4th grade or whatever, it pops up in your head and keeps you awake for another half hour as you torment over it. Would you tamper that memory to say something cool or whatever?
No.
No?
I don't think so. It would change. I feel like those moments make you who you are. And we're all an accumulation of good and bad moments, embarrassing ones and ridiculous ones and whatever. And once you start to tamper with that, then you change who you are. So might it be uncomfortable and awkward? Yes. But I think the real temptation to change it is when someone else has the chance to look at it. Because if it's me just watching my own embarrassing memory, cool, whatever. But if it's like you or somebody else like watching my embarrassing memory, then I'm like, oh, you're going to judge me. So yeah, then I might feel inclined to tweak it.
Clearly Slughorn views this memory a certain type of way. Mm-hmm. So maybe he did. He was like, oh, Dumbledore's asking me about this? Hold on. Yep. And, let's change it up a little bit.
Which Dumbledore said, he's like, we're lucky that he did such a poor rushed job with it. Because if he didn't, then that would not let us know that there's an actual real memory out there that we haven't gotten yet. And we need that memory.
But it's Harry's homework now.
Yeah, he has homework.
He has homework for the first time. And the homework is to go get the real memory from Slughorn.
Yep.
And Harry's like, I'm sorry, sir. Am I really the right guy for this? Because you're Albus Dumbledore. Couldn't you do this better?
Yeah, we have so many available means to do so.
And Albus responds with, Slughorn is an extremely able wizard who will be expecting not only me to come for him, because I've already done it once, but he'll expect most means of coercion.
Like Veritaserum. He'd
or
probably
Legilimens.
have an antidote, yeah. Like, he expects these attacks.
Yeah. So he's an able wizard. You can't just kind of pull one over on him easily.
But he did say he has his weaknesses. And he said, Harry, you are like the only person who I believe can manipulate those weaknesses and get that real memory.
Good night.
Which is why it's your homework. Do your homework.
And then he's just like, good night.
And then there's one
Done.
more touching moment, though. Like, Phineas said, like, I don't get why you're letting Harry do this and why you think he's going to do it better than you. And Dumbledore replied, I wouldn't expect you to, Phineas. And then Fox let out another musical cry. And my heart goes, aww. It's so cute.
And that's where the chapter ends.
It's just very sweet. Like, Dumbledore sees into Harry things that other people don't necessarily see.
He also misses things about Harry that
True,
other people wouldn't miss.
Yes, but yeah. No,
So,
he knows he's capable, and I like that he trusts him to be able to do this job.
Are you saying he's like Gandalf in the Hobbits?
Yeah.
He's like, you shouldn't be able to do this job, but somehow you're going to get this done.
Yeah, don't underestimate those hobbits. Don't underestimate Harry.
Harry is Frodo. Okay, so we are going to wrap up the chapter non-spoiler discussion here. We will be back with a spoiler section right after this break sound. We get some Wan. We get Elizabeth having a little bit of a rebuttal to some of the episodes she missed because they're big episodes. And we have a couple of spoilers from this chapter. So we will be right back. Before we get to our break sound, I'd like to acknowledge our friend Andy, who helps us produce our intros and our break sounds. If you want to hear more of Andy's work and like Formula One racing, check out the Outlap F1 podcast. It's your one-stop shop for Formula One news, insights, race previews, and reviews. You can find them wherever you listen to podcasts, and they even have a YouTube page. So check out Andy, Cody, John, James, and Deanna, and join them on the Outlap.
Where is he? Where's my 1-1?
All right, so we're back with the spoiler section of Chapter 17, A Sluggish Memory. I did want to start out with one spoiler from this chapter. Albus seems very confident and in control when Harry is going after him about the Snape-Draco conversation. Mm-hmm. But, in reality, Dumbledore doesn't know everything. He knows most of it. He knows, obviously, Snape's talking with Draco.
Right. He
He knows all of the Spinner's End meeting, because Snape would have told him about Bellatrix and Narcissa.
he knows why he trusts Snape.
He knows why he trusts Snape. So he has like 95 to 98% of the information. What he doesn't know is what Draco is actually planning.
Right.
And the depths to which he'll go, and
The desperation.
the effectiveness of it.
Mm-hmm.
I think he...
Well, that's why he's got Snape, like, trying to get
Well, yeah,
him
but
to talk.
I don't think he looks down on Draco. Like, I don't think he underestimates Draco.
Mm-hmm.
But he does kind of underestimate Draco, because I think at that moment on the astronomy tower, he's like, wow, you actually got me. You actually got one past me. Kind of, how did you do it?
Yeah, a little bit.
I think he's actually genuinely almost impressed by Draco. He's like, actually, I didn't know you had that in you. Great job.
I think he knows he has it in him, and that's why he does have Snape trying to really push to get that information. But you're right that it was like, I'm impressed that was not a way I foresaw.
Well, I think what it is he's worried that a 16-year-old, under the pressure that he's under, will start taking some wild swings.
And then
Which he does.
gets hurt.
Draco does take some wild swings. That was the whole Katie Bell incident.
And that will be like with the
And that's
Ron
fine.
incident, yeah.
I don't think he knew that Draco had what he had in the
Like
tank.
an actual plan.
Like an actual
Yeah.
plan that he's clearly been thinking of since the summer, because that's when he walked into Borgin and Burks and was like, hold that. Mm-hmm. So I don't think he knew that Draco had that in him. But so my point is, Albus seems like, oh, I've got everything under control, Harry, don't you worry about it. Oops. But yeah. So do you have any spoilers specifically, or
from this chapter?
yeah?
Well, we do know, obviously, Slughorn's, we will get his real memory. Which, if we think about the timeline of this, because that always fascinates me, like this, when Voldemort is asking him the question about Horcruxes, notice it's Horcruxes, not Horcrux. So we know 16-year-old Tom Riddle has already made a Horcrux with his diary. That was the first one that was created and first one destroyed. Interesting. But his real purpose of this meeting is to find out, can I make more? Specifically, can I make 7 of them, since 7 is the most powerful magical number? And like, what is that going to do to me? And all these really, really dark questions, which makes sense for why Slughorn tried to cover it up, because he was like, I shouldn't have answered those, and I did.
How does Slughorn even know this much about Horcruxes that Tom Riddle can't get?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, like, I guess we'll obviously get more into this later, but like actually creating a Horcrux, we don't know if it's a potion kind of thing you gotta do, or a charm, or like some kind of
Or a combination of
a combination of all the things. Like, I mean, if it's potions, I could see why Slughorn would have more knowledge of that, just because he's a potions master. But
I get that Slughorn, and Dumbledore says it in this chapter, he's an extremely able wizard. Mm-hmm. I don't think people realize how much of a compliment that is.
yeah, he's very intelligent.
Like, Dumbledore is saying, you're really good.
Yeah.
That says a lot.
Yeah.
And I think later throughout the series, we see Slughorn's abilities. He's, truthfully, an extremely able wizard. Mm-hmm. So maybe he's just that knowledgeable about things in general. Mm-hmm. But still, that's a particular sect of magic that's like, I'm sorry, why do you know
Well, it
this?
seems like very few people know that this even exists. And it does make you wonder, like, I mean, what interaction does Slughorn have that gave him this knowledge? Was it just he's just stumbled upon it in a book like Hermione would have? Or is this a magic that used to be taught more that is not taught anymore? Or is it a potion-specific thing? Do you know someone who made a Horcrux? Like, Slughorn's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else, or do you want to get to your rebuttals?
It's the start of the end of the love triangles, which makes me happy because I hate those love triangles.
Obviously, this is the first sign that Ginny and Dean are on the outs.
Uh-huh.
And
Ron and Lavender, spoiler alert, not meant to be.
yeah, well, that beginning of that end was the My Sweetheart necklace over
that was
Christmas. And Ron was like, why would she even think I want this? And Ron goes like, well, we actually don't really talk.
No, all we do is kiss.
Right. So yeah, that was the real beginning of the end. And then everything Lavender did here, which was quite aggressive, which, you know, the debates that you and I have had and Julie and I have had about Ron and Lavender seems to be very into this relationship.
I still think it's Lavender because she does the whole like, one, and like, I missed you, my sweetheart. Like, I still think to a degree she gets a kick out of everybody seeing her with a boyfriend.
Sure.
And Ron being that boyfriend. So, yeah, she goes into it too much.
She goes way overboard.
She is full on into it. Ron is just into it for the making out. And
there you go.
Now that he realizes that this extra aspect comes with the relationship, it's like, oh, I don't like that.
Couldn't Ron actually talk to her about this and be like, hey, you know, can we dial it down a notch?
Ron's not good with talking to girls.
I don't think he knows. Legitimately.
I think he's the kind of guy who is like, wait, do I have permission to break up with her? I can do that. I can get out of this relationship.
Legitimately, I don't think he knows that he can ask that, nor how to ask that with the, like, hey, can we, like...
Can you not
you're
run
at
up
like
to me and embarrass me in front of my friends?
You're at like a 15 out of 10. I need you at like a 7. Like, could we like just dial it down?
Yeah.
And then we'll be cool if you could just ratchet it down just a bit.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So
this was not meant to be.
All I'm saying is, my whole thing from the beginning is Lavender is a part of this relationship too, and she's obviously taking a much more aggressive part of this relationship. But anyway.
Yeah.
What other thoughts do you have from some of the other chapters?
You and Julie talked about Rufus and that whole meeting that went down.
We had a little debate. I posed some questions about, does Harry actually have a duty to the Ministry of Magic? And if so, does he miss an opportunity to actually change the Ministry of Magic? Or change this war for the better? And then the other option is, you know, with Rufus mentioning Umbridge. Was that the deal breaker? Or if he doesn't say that, does he go with the Ministry? Yeah.
Well, I'm probably somewhere in between you and Julie, but more leaning towards what Julie had to say.
Shocking.
The Umbridge mention, first of all, yeah, like that was the cherry on top of the sundae. Like, there's no way you can mention Umbridge and expect him to go along with what you're talking about. Like, the woman made him scrape "I will not tell lies" into his hands, and you're literally asking him to tell lies.
To be clear, I think it is abhorrent that she is still employed at the Ministry of Magic.
Yeah.
And I told Julie, I'm like, is there a clause in that like HR department where they can't fire her? Or like, what's the deal?
For torturing children?
I don't know. Does she have like a stone cold contract where they... But to my other point of like, maybe this is a chance for Harry to do some good here. He doesn't press that. He's not why is she still employed?
Here's my thought with that. Like, you asked, does he have a duty to the Ministry, and did he miss an opportunity? I don't think he has a duty to the Ministry because it's the Ministry's job to combat Voldemort and keep everyone safe. And Harry really doesn't have anything to offer them that would help in that goal. Like, the idea of, you know, Harry's the chosen one, and if we told everyone that the chosen one approves of what the Ministry is doing, then we'll win. It's like, no, you telling everyone that I'm the chosen one for real just push this extra, like, bullseye on my back that people are going to come after me more, or they're going to expect me to be perfect, and I'm not perfect. I'm 16 years old, and I also don't have all the information that Dumbledore has. So I don't think him going along and you know, having the duty to be like, yes, the Ministry's great. Like, I think that's dumb. Did he miss the opportunity to change the Ministry for the better? I don't know if the ministry would actually allow him the opportunity to change them for the better. I don't think that they would listen to him and anything he would have to say, because similar with the Dumbledore situation, I think Rufus would be like, well, you're just this dumb 16-year-old kid. Like, you don't actually know what you're talking about. I've been through wars. I was the head of the Auror office, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I've seen some things, kid. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. And it's like, okay, well, as Dumbledore has quoted before, like, age sometimes forgets what youth goes through and feels and knows and how wise they can be. And I think the ministry would just be like, look, all we want is a mascot. Stand here, smile, and shut up. Don't give us your sense of what we should do, because we know what we're doing. Like, I don't think they'd listen to him enough to change it for the better.
I don't disagree with you in the idea that, are they really going to listen to a 16-year-old? Even if that 16-year-old is Harry Potter. Mm-hmm. But you are allowing him in the door, and the idea that the Order of the Phoenix has got this, I'm sorry, they don't.
No, they don't.
They don't. And
I think the way that Harry can create change is like how he did that interview with Rita of, it's been published.
You can do that through the prophet, though.
Yeah, but I think the ministry, since it leans on the prophet so much, would probably censor some things. And if he's like, I don't approve of what the ministry is doing with, for example, Stan, then he'd read that and be like, no, that's not an accurate portrayal of me, and I'm not happy about that. But the way he did that kind of guerrilla warfare of, I'm going to surprise you guys with this article that everyone's going to read, and it's going to be unfiltered, and it's going to tell my truth, that's the way that he forces the ministry to have to act to be better. Because they have to respond to that. The
Order of the Phoenix versus the Ministry of Magic versus Voldemort is a win for Voldemort.
I don't think the Order is against the Ministry,
and here, if you're not together, you're separate. So if you're separate, Voldy can pick you off easier.
I don't think them...
If you're sharing information, which they're not, they're very definitively not.
But they're not being like, the Ministry is bad, don't work with them, don't like.
That's the image you're getting. That's literally what Rufus is there to do, is like, if you're not with us, you're ending up being against us.
But I also don't think that you're necessarily against them just because you're not with them.
You very clearly are.
I disagree, because I feel like if the ministry was like doing some raid and the Order came in and messed it up, then yes, you're going against them. But if the Order shares all the knowledge that they have, and we know the ministry has been infiltrated before and does eventually get like taken over, then it's not safe for all the eggs to be in one basket, for everyone to be in on the knowledge.
Rufus gets a bad rap in that last chapter of Frosty Christmas. Mm-hmm. Because, you're just trying to use Harry as a mascot. You don't actually care about him. Mm-hmm. He keeps Harry's secret in 7.
Yeah.
He dies.
I mean, he dies on a high note, but
by
up to
getting attacked by multiple Death Eaters, he goes down and doesn't give up Harry.
And I think the reason being is because he recognized by that point, I should have been listening to Dumbledore this whole time.
That was a testy meeting that they even had going over Dumbledore's will. And so, I mean, they weren't in great terms either at that point. No,
but I think that he's a smart enough man to put together that, yes, he is the chosen one. And yes, like that. No, because I don't think Fudge would have finally come around to the idea of like, Harry is going to save us all. But Rufus, I feel like, recognizes Dumbledore is right. We have to put our faith in Harry. He had a plan. Harry is working on it. I need to do what I can to make sure that he succeeds in this. And at that final moment of getting attacked, like, that's his moment to step up and learn from Fudge's mistakes and be a better man and a leader.
Rufus is a better leader than Fudge from the get-go.
Yeah, but this is his way of making up for this Christmas meeting and the will meeting that they have. Because you're right, that's like a horrible meeting.
I honestly don't think Rufus has, from his point of view, and from the point of view of the Minister of Magic in that, I don't think he has anything to apologize for, period. I think he's handling his country how he feels is the best way to handle. He has one misstep where he says, well, are you the chosen one? And then he's like, I'm sorry, that was out of line.
Well, that and when he goes over the will for the 31 days to try to figure out what's the secrets behind Will's...
It was Albus Dumbledore, and if you're passing, like, I mean, come on. The only things he doesn't leave to Hogwarts are 3 things. Yes, you're going to pour over those 3. That's just a security issue.
I'm just saying, like, you're wasting all that time to look over it and then try to interrogate 3 17-year-olds about this.
If you're the Minister of Magic and you're like, I'm sorry, Dumbledore left you 3 specifically?
Well, that's why I think it's like... That's why I think he has the knowledge, like, okay, Dumbledore had a plan. Harry probably is the chosen one. I have to sacrifice myself when I'm getting attacked. I'm not going to give up that information because that's the only chance we got. Like, I think that is his best moment as being a minister.
I don't know that Rufus truly believes in a prophecy. I don't
think it's anything about prophecy. I think it's just
the chosen one is a prophecy. But the idea of, like, Harry being a symbol that people can rally around is real. And I think in his viewpoint, he's not wrong in assuming they need that. They need a rallying point to bring the wizarding world together to fight this very real, very dangerous threat.
Yeah, but I'm still with Harry of like, okay, the previous rallying point around me was that I'm the enemy, I'm an idiot, and I'm a liar.
Fudge's regime.
Right, and they took that to such degrees. Who's to say they wouldn't take this to an equally dangerous degree that makes his life incredibly
difficult? He ends up becoming this anyway.
But I mean, like, if he's...
Except now everybody's fractured.
If everyone truly believes he's the chosen one, imagine him walking around with people fawning over him more than they already do and getting in his way. He can't get anything done if like... everyone's constantly watching. I don't think it brings people hope to see, hey, this person who's going to save us all is in line with what the ministry does. It reminds me of the whole Captain America being used as a mascot. That's what Julie said. Was it really?
I don't know. That's where I'm coming from, is the idea of if you're not with us, you're against us. Not because you're like literally fighting us. It's that if we're not together, Voldy can separate us even more. That's the whole crux of the Fudge Dumbledore argument back in Goblet of Fire, is like, we got to be good on this, because if we're not, that's kind of what Voldy wants.
Yeah, but I still see Dumbledore's point of not letting everybody know everything all at once.
No, Rufus. Just Rufus. Let him know. And I think what he does in Book 7 proves he's at least trustworthy, because he never got infiltrated. They had to take him out. And they knew we need Rufus gone for us to fully take over the ministry.
I think this is like, you know how in the United States there's like classified and there's secret and there's like all these varying levels of how classified something is? I think Rufus can see certain levels of classified, but I don't think I still don't think he should see the top.
He's the top boss.
I don't think he should see it.
Top boss.
I think there's too much at stake. With Dumbledore's plan, there's too much at stake for anyone else to know.
I'm not telling him about the Horcruxes, but I mean, you gotta be like sharing information about like, hey, I think Fenrir Greyback is doing this with the werewolves.
No, and hey, I think that would be a lower level of classification that he would be like prone to. But I think anything involving Harry is top of the line. Okay, that's you should not be.
That's Albus and Harry, and I guess Hermione and Ron. Fine, but other than that. No, you should be working with Rufus to snuff out this werewolf rebellion that's happening. You should be working with him to snuff out the giant issue.
Well, we don't know if 100% that he's not getting those aspects. We just know he's not getting Harry, and that's what's making him angry.
Well, yeah, but that's a PR move, but there's a lot there. And I think
there's also a lot that we don't know that we're trying to put our own thoughts of filling in the blanks.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of unwritten words that we're trying to, but that's what, Elizabeth, that's our job. We're a podcast. If we had nothing to talk about, we wouldn't be doing as well as we are. And thank you to all of our listeners for listening and supporting the podcast. We really appreciate everything that you do, like leaving 5-star reviews on Spotify, like commenting on Spotify and Twitter and our Instagram, where you can reach us at HogwartsAPod. Participate in those polls on Spotify. That helps us out too. There's also support this podcast link wherever you're listening that you can donate financially to us. That helps us a ton. Share the podcast with whoever you know that likes Harry Potter, friends, family, significant others, whoever. That really helps us out and gets us out to new people so we can grow and keep doing what we're doing. Because I like debating Harry Potter, if you couldn't tell.
You like it when we disagree with you.
I still think I'm right. But you let us know if I'm right or if I'm way off base. That's okay. And we will shout you out and we will debate it all over again when we get those comments.
Yes, we will.
Thank you all for listening. We will be back next week with Chapter 18. Thanks for listening. Thank you for listening to Hogwarts, a podcast. If you like what you've heard, please click the subscribe button on your preferred podcasting app and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at HogwartsAPod.